Greetings and welcome back to the No Channel. This is Bernadette Johnson. I'm also known as Keziah or Kizzy. And today I'm coming to you with part 2 of the video, The Proof is in Our Names. Now the other week I came to you with the first part of The Proof is in Our Names. So I would say that if you haven't watched the first part of this video, before you even proceed with this one, I would advise you to go back and watch the first part of this video, given that it's the same title, and it says, African Americans at Mars Bluff, South Carolina, what their names reveal. So that's what you would put in to find the first part, because it's not part 1. I don't have it labeled as part 1. But that is the title of it. So that's a screenshot of the video, because I'm not going to, go back through the points I made in the first video. So you will probably be lost if you just watch this video without watching the first part. So I'll advise you, if you haven't watched this part already, to go back and watch it so you can better follow this video that I'm doing today. So anyway, I'm coming to you with part 2 of The Proof is in Our Names. And of course, if you watched the video, the first part, I talked about the African Americans who lived in this Mars Bluff region of South Carolina, which Mars Bluff is as I said, it's an unincorporated area within Florence County, South Carolina. And I had given an example of how this family, what they named their daughter, and how that name traced it back to the Hebrew language. And so today I'm coming to you with a second example of this same family, the Ellison family. They also named a son with an interesting name. And just to be clear, I just want to make this clear, because I didn't make this point in the first part. When I talk about their names can be traced back to Hebrew names, I'm not talking about a Europeanized biblical name like John or Jacob or Jeremiah, because you had slave masters naming their slaves those names all day, every day. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about names that either the slaves or the descendants of slaves named their children independently from what their masters named them. That's what I'm talking about. For instance, if you watch the movie Roots and how Kunta Kinte named his daughter Kizzy, that was not a name that the slave master gave her. That was a name her father, Kunta Kinte, gave her. And if you, do the research on the name Kizzy, Kizzy is, I believe I said this in the first part, Kizzy traces back to a Hebrew name as well, in which it means like the cinnamon tree, cinnamon cassia. Cassia is like a cinnamon related or cinnamon type, spice. So, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that. No, I'm not talking about a Europeanized biblical name that the Europeans gave. No, because if that's the case, there wouldn't be anything to it. You would say, okay, if I say, okay, well, this slave or this descendant of slaves was named John, you would say, so what? There were a gazillion slaves named John. That's not what I'm talking about. This was something that I'm talking about, names that these slaves or descendants of slaves gave their children independently from their masters. Names that was carried over from their homeland. That's what I'm talking about today. Okay, since I made that point, let's continue on. So, now this one is going to be shorter than the first one, because I'm not going to give a backstory, because I told you, if you want the backstory, watch the first part. So let's continue. So this is on page 165 of the book. Of course, this is based on the book, African Americans at Mars Bluff in South Carolina by Mars Bluff, South Carolina by Amelia Vernon Wallace. And I said in the first part that Amelia Vernon Wallace, her family was owned a plantation in this Mars Bluff region. So this book that she wrote is about the African Americans who lived in this region. Okay, so let's continue. So this is page 165, and this is what it reads. The Ellisons also had a son named Shirley, pronounced Shuley. So I just said Shirley because that's how one would pronounce it if they didn't know the correct pronunciation of it. But the pronunciation of it, either the Shul or Shuli, something on that order. You see the spelling of it. Shuli was the name borne by one of the men aboard the Amistad, a ship commandeered by slaves in 1839. He was a Mende from Sierra Leone. Now, let me pause here now. A lot of you may be familiar with this Amistad, a ship that this was like doing this transatlantic slave trade, because there's a movie about this also that was made about this, where these slaves who were captured, where they weren't slaves, they weren't captured, they were, of course, people from, the African region were captured, and they overtook this ship. And of course, you can read the rest of it, but they overtook this ship. And I don't know if all of them on the ship, but I know some of them, they end up, they were brought to the United States, even though they overtook the ship. But I believe it was whoever, they, of course, they unalived some of the sailors. I'm not sure about the captain or anything, but whoever was controlling the ship, they tricked the captives, making them think that the ship was going back to Africa, but it ended up going to the United States anyway. But anyway, the captives protested for their freedom. They argued for their freedom, and I know at least some of them. I know the main star in the movie, the one that the character, he ended up he ended up getting taken back to Africa. So he did win his freedom. I'm not sure if all aboard the ship did, but I know he did. But anyway, that's just like a brief summary of the Amistad, the story behind the Amistad ship. But of course, you can watch the movie and you can do the research to learn more about it. But anyway, as I said, as I read, he was a Mende from Sierra Leone. That's a country in Africa. Paul Richards thought it possible that Shule, this is the name, could be a shortened form of Suleiman, a name that is common among Muslims and therefore not limited to a specific part of Africa. Now, of course, Suleiman, that traces back to Africa, but of course, what does Suleiman sounds like? Solomon. And of course, the Arabic language and the Hebrew language are closely connected, because the Arabs and the Hebrews, they were very close. They were closely related. They were both Shemitic people, both descended from, Shem and also from Abraham. So their languages and their cultures are very similar. But a lot of times when it comes to us and our ancestors, they always try to trace us back to the Islam, Muslim, and make it seem that if those were, that we have Islamic roots. Oh, the reason that the Africans, when they first came over here, they didn't eat pork, it was because of their Muslim heritage. No. I'm not saying that some of our people didn't convert to Islam, because I can believe some did, because by then, we were practicing other forms of, religion and things like that. But a lot of it was due to our Israelite heritage, not so much as our Muslim beliefs. But anyway, so continuing on, Paul Richards thought that Shule was a shortened form of Suleiman, which of course it sounds a lot like, of course, Solomon. But anyway, before we go into that, I want to go back to the Mende. I want to, make sure I'm very thorough in this. Now, the Mende, he was a Mende, this captive who was a leader in the revolt on the ship Amistad. He was a Mende, and of course, that's an ethnic group in Africa. And this is just a little snippet in from Wikipedia, the Mende people. And as you can see, the Mende are two of the largest ethnic groups in Sierra Leone. And you probably heard of the Mandinka. The Mandinka is also under this umbrella of the Mande people. That's instead of an E, that's an A. It's an M-A-N-D-E, the Mande people. Mandinka and the Mende fall under the same umbrella. While Mende and the Mandinka are not the same people, they are related because they fall under the umbrella as the Mande people. Mande people, rather. And this was a video I seen some years ago by this brother. His channel is Fellowship of the Resurrection. And he did a very, interesting and informative video titled The Mande, Ghana and Mali, Israelite Kingdoms of West Africa. And in this video, he uses scholarly sources where that traces the Mande, this ethnic umbrella that the Mende and the Mandinka fall under, and he traces them back to the tribe of Judah. And he talks about the Israelite kingdoms of Ghana and Mali in West Africa, and he uses scholarly resources to trace the Mande back to Judah, which is interesting. That's why I wanted to say this before I go into the discussion about the Shule and the Suleiman rather. So, as I said, Suleiman sounds a lot like Solomon. So, of course, I went to Strong's Hebrew and typed in Solomon. However, when I typed in Solomon, this came up, Shlomo. Now, those of you who are a little bit familiar with, Hebrew names, Shlomo is the Hebrew name for Solomon. This is the correct Hebrew name for Solomon. So if you want to see Solomon, that's like a Europeanized version of this Hebrew name, Shlomo. And you look at Shlomo. Let's go back to that passage. Shule, however you pronounce it, but look at the spelling. See how close it is to Shlomo? Shule, Shlomo. And of course, the meaning of Solomon or Shlomo means peace. And of course, Shlomo or Solomon was David's son, one of David's sons. And he took the reign after, David left the scene, after David passed away. He took the reign as king of Israel. But here is more proof. You think about it. Now, I just showed you where in the quote, it says that Shule was the name borne by one of the men aboard the Amistad. And that man was from the Mende people. And then this video traces the Mande people, which the Mende falls under, to the tribe of Judah. Once again, there's an example. You can't make it up. Once again, there is proof of our Israelite heritage. Hallelujah. So I just didn't want to stop with that one example in the first part. I wanted to show you a second example. After reading the book African Americans at Mars Bluff, South Carolina, I just want to show you that there was actually another example where this Ellison family named their son. The first one was their daughter, but they named their son Shule. Shlomo. Look how similar it is. once again, the proof is in our name. So hopefully, you found this interesting and enlightening. And maybe this way it may inspire you to do some research of, your own family and their names. So that's my message for today. And I hope that you've been blessed. And until next time, and also too, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Please give some feedback. Let me know what you think. And also, if there's something that you came across in your own family history, please be free to share. And also, before I close out, how could I forget this? Speaking of the Mindy, my father's maternal line, because see, he submitted his DNA to the African tribes database. Now this African tribe database, they don't sell your DNA like how it was like about the 23andMe and all of that. No, it says, if you read, it says that they don't sell your DNA. But anyway, his maternal, that's his mother's side, lineage traced back to the Mindy people. And that's one reason that this, this really caught my eye when I read it in the book about the Mindy, because my father's maternal lineage traces back to the Mindy people, meaning it traces back to, if you take it all the way back, traces back to Judah, Yehuda, as the Hebrew pronunciation of it, Yehuda, Judah. So I just want to share you just a little bit about, my own family history. On my father's mother's side, it traces back to Mindy, Judah. But anyway, so that's my message, and may you all continue to be blessed. And until next time, be blessed.